Every conversation you have ever had follows an invisible set of rules, so precise that the gap between one person finishing and another starting can be measured in milliseconds. When someone interrupts you, they are not just being rude. They are sending a signal about dominance, insecurity, impatience, or control, one most people never learn to read. And what those interruptions quietly cost you turns out to be far more measurable than a lost sentence. Number 17. Meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. Everyday conversation runs on a kind of clockwork, one that rarely draws attention unless something disrupts its rhythm. Beneath the surface, each exchange is shaped by a system of turns, where speakers build their contributions in distinct units known as turn construction units, or TCUS. These might be a single word, a phrase, or a full sentence, but each is designed with an endpoint in mind. At the close of a TCU, a subtle but crucial window opens, the transition relevance place, or TRP. This is the moment when the floor is up for grabs, and the next speaker can step in without breaking the flow. The precision of this handoff is remarkable. Studies of natural conversation reveal that the pause between one speaker finishing and another starting is often less than a blink, typically just 30 to 80 milliseconds of stretched vowel at the end of a turn. Acoustic analyses show that, as a speaker nears a TRP, their pitch drops by about 15 Hz and their final syllables lengthen ever so slightly. These cues signal to others that a turn is wrapping up, creating a kind of shared awareness that guides the next move. But speech timing is not just about sound. Listeners also track nonverbal signals, gaze shifts, a hand gesture that finishes in sync with a sentence, a brief glance away. These multimodal cues often arrive a split second before the voice trails off, preparing the group for the next speaker. In face-to-face settings, a listener may break eye contact or lean forward just as the current speaker's pitch falls, aligning their own body language with the invisible pulse of the conversation. Researchers analyzing dinner table talk, courtroom exchanges, and remote meetings find that these micro-timings differ by context but remain tightly coordinated. When the system works, conversation flows with minimal overlap and almost no dead air. The machinery is so finely tuned that even a 100-millisecond delay, such as on a video call, can double the chance of two people speaking at once. It is this fragile choreography, built from acoustic, prosodic, and nonverbal signals, that makes interruptions such a meaningful breach. When someone cuts in before the TRP, they are not just breaking etiquette, they are stepping into the gears of an intricate social clock. Interrupting is rarely just a slip of manners. Beneath the surface, it often reflects a web of inner drives, some strategic, some impulsive, and some shaped by the brain's limits. Researchers studying family conversations, boardroom debates, and even courtroom exchanges have found a strong link between interruption and social dominance. Those who cut in more frequently are often perceived as higher status, while those who are interrupted repeatedly may be seen as less authoritative. In a now classic study, men interrupted women nearly twice as often in mixed gender groups, using interruption as a tool to steer the conversation or claim the floor. Yet status, not gender alone, drives this pattern, as high-ranking individuals, regardless of gender, are more likely to interrupt and less likely to be interrupted themselves. But not every interruption is a power move. Sometimes impatience or a spike in urgency pushes someone to speak before the turn is up. Under time pressure, people can feel as if the clock is ticking faster than it really is. Experiments on subjective time perception show that when cognitive load rises, when there is more to remember, more at stake, or more to juggle, speakers are prone to underestimate how long they've been waiting. This compression of perceived time increases the odds of cutting in, especially in high-stakes settings where missing a chance to speak feels risky. In workplaces, for example, employees facing tight deadlines or rapid-fire meetings will often interrupt simply to make sure their point is heard before the topic shifts. Cognitive overload adds another layer. When the mind is juggling too many thoughts, the urge to offload an idea before it is forgotten can override social timing. Studies on working memory and conversational behavior confirm that high cognitive demand leads to more premature turn-taking. This is not always calculated, and it can be an act of self-preservation in a crowded mental space. The result is a conversation where the boundary between assertiveness, impatience, and forgetfulness blurs, and interruptions become a signal of both internal urgency and external status claims. Each interruption, then, is shaped by a mix of dominance, impatience, and the sheer limits of memory, revealing as much about the speaker's state of mind as about their place in the social order. Aisha's voice falters for just a moment during a weekly team meeting. Before her thought lands, a senior colleague cuts in, redirecting the discussion to a new agenda item. In that instant, the room's attention pivots, and Aisha's point dissolves into the background. This is the competitive interruption, a move that asserts control and shifts the spotlight, often leaving the original speaker with little room to recover. In mixed gender settings, women like Aisha are interrupted nearly twice as often as men, especially when power and status are on display. On a Monday morning Zoom call, a project manager pauses to gather her words. A 200-millisecond transmission lag creates just enough uncertainty that two voices overlap. One participant, anxious about being forgotten, jumps in early, while another, misreading the pause, starts to speak. The conversation fragments, and both speakers retreat, apologizing for the confusion. Here, interruption is shaped by the transmission lag and by insecurity, by the subtle fear that a thought might vanish before it is heard. In the quiet of a shared kitchen, a couple debates weekend plans. One partner interrupts mid-sentence, not to dominate, but to finish the other's thought, echoing the last phrase with a smile. This is the impulsive, excitement-driven interruption. Less about power, more about shared excitement. The overlap is brief and often welcomed, a sign of connection rather than competition. At a crowded family dinner, voices tumble over one another. Multiple people speak at once, laughter rising above the din. In some cultures, this rapid-fire overlap is a sign of warmth and belonging, not rudeness. The rules of turn-taking flex to fit the context, and what might seem disruptive elsewhere is here a marker of solidarity. In a college classroom, a professor pauses deliberately, inviting a student to complete the sentence. The interruption is planned, an educational tool that draws students into the flow. Research on pedagogical strategies shows that inviting completion can boost engagement and help students process new ideas. In this setting, interruption becomes a cooperative act, signaling trust and shared purpose. Across these scenes, interruption reveals its many faces: a bid for power, a burst of anxiety, a flash of excitement, a cultural script, or a teaching tool. The meaning depends not just on who speaks, but on why, where, and how the moment unfolds. Losing the floor in conversation leaves more than a fleeting impression. In small group studies, participants interrupted mid-sentence not only lost speaking time, but also saw their perceived authority dip in follow-up ratings. On average, those cut off were rated as less competent by peers, a finding echoed in boardrooms and courtrooms alike. The physiological response is just as real. Controlled lab experiments show that a single interruption can trigger a measurable spike in salivary cortisol, about plus 0.12 micrograms per deciliter, signaling a stress response that lingers well after the exchange. Over time, these moments accumulate. Observational research links frequent interruption to a steady drop in participation and confidence, particularly for those already lower in the social hierarchy. Yet, the story does not end at the cost. Structured interventions can change the rhythm of group talk. In corporate meetings, introducing a visible speaker queue, a simple list showing who will speak next, reduced unsolicited interruptions by 37%. Participants reported feeling more included, and post-meeting surveys reflected a rise in perceived fairness and confidence. The same approach, when used in classrooms and brainstorming sessions, cut overlapping speech by about a third and improved idea retention for everyone at the table. When interruptions do happen, emotionally intelligent responses can restore balance without escalating tension. 6 strategies, drawn from communication research and coaching, offer practical scripts for reclaiming the floor. Number 1. I'm sorry. May I finish my point? This is a calm, direct request that asserts presence without aggression. Number 2. Pause briefly, then say, hold that thought, I'll be right back with my final sentence. This signals intent to complete while acknowledging the interrupter. Number 3. Say, I noticed I was cut off. Could we revisit that idea? This meta-communication makes the interruption visible without blame. Number 4. An ally can intervene by saying, If I may add, I'd like to hear the rest of that thought. This restores the original speaker's place. Number 5. Use nonverbal cues like leaning forward, raising a hand, and holding eye contact, especially effective in video calls where vocal cues compete with latency. Number 6. Set norms in advance. For example, a no-interrupt pledge, using the raise hand feature, or agreeing on a speaker cue before the meeting begins. Each of these moves is designed to protect both the flow of ideas and the dignity of the speaker. The evidence suggests that even small changes, whether a structured turn-taking tool or a well-timed phrase, can shift the social balance, lower stress, and help every voice be heard. Every interruption draws a line between presence and power, shaping how voices are heard and remembered. As workplaces and relationships navigate these subtle signals, social dynamics shift in real time. Our awareness now determines whether conversations divide or connect. The next pause is yours. What will you do with it?